There is an organism living in your backyard right now that breaks every rule of modern biology. It has no roots, it has no leaves, it requires no soil, no fertilizer, and absolutely no care. Yet under the right conditions, this microscopic plant does something that sounds biologically impossible. It doubles its entire mass every 16 to 24 hours. Think about that. 1 pound becomes 2 pounds by tomorrow. 2 becomes 4. 4 becomes 8. It is a perpetual biological machine, a vegetative reactor that outproduces soybeans by 10 to 1 and creates protein more efficiently than any livestock on Earth. But you have been trained to hate it. Right now, homeowners associations across America are spending over $800 an acre to poison this plant. They call it a Tier 1 aquatic nuisance. They engineered specific chemical weapons like fluoridone just to wipe it out. They created a $650 million industry dedicated solely to its destruction. And here is the ultimate irony. While we poison it here on Earth as a green plague, NASA engineers are currently cultivating it on the International Space Station as the future of human survival on Mars. Why is the world's most efficient food source treated like a disease? Why do they want you to see abundance as infestation? The answer will change the way you look at the water forever. Welcome to reclaimed nature, where truth grows wild. To understand the modern war waged against this plant, we must first journey back to a time before chemical patents and industrial monocultures. We must go back to when nature's abundance was revered, not eradicated. The archive opens in the rural villages of northern Thailand and Laos. Here the water does not reflect the sky like a dead mirror. It is alive. It is a vibrant neon green. If you look closely, you will see grandmothers wading into the ponds not with Tyvek suits and spray tanks, but with fine mesh nets. They are not cleaning the water, they are harvesting. They gently skim the surface, collecting millions of tiny, rootless green spheres. They call this Khai-nam, eggs of the water. For generations long before modern science could analyze amino acid profiles, these communities understood a simple truth. When the rice harvest failed, or when game was scarce, the green water would keep them alive. They washed these tiny spheres and cooked them into soups or curries, unlocking a source of protein that required no land to grow and no blood to spill. They didn't need a laboratory to tell them it was valuable. Their survival was the proof. This respect for the green water echoes through history. 300 years before Christ, the Greek botanist Theophrastus documented this plant in his botanical inquiries. He named it lemna. He didn't classify it as refuse or debris. He recognized it as a distinct complex water entity worthy of study. You know this plant by a different name. You know it as duckweed. But before it was duckweed, it was medicine. Travel further east to the Han Dynasty in China 2,000 years ago. Ancient medical texts didn't list this plant as a nuisance to be removed from imperial gardens. They listed it as a medicine. Physicians prescribed it to reduce fevers and treat inflammation intuitively, understanding that a plant born of cool, still water carried the power to balance the heat of the body. Even the Buddhist monks of ancient India, seeking the path of asceticism, turned to this plant. To them, it wasn't just food. It was a symbol of spiritual purity. It was the simplest form of life, asking for nothing, taking up no space, yet providing everything needed to sustain the body. Eating it was an act of harmony, a rejection of violence and complex agriculture. These were not primitive people eating garbage out of desperation. These were sophisticated civilizations that built pyramids, charted the stars, and understood agriculture better than most modern farmers. They saw this plant for what it truly was, a gift. They looked at a pond covered in green and saw a harvest. We look at the same pond today and see a crime scene that needs to be sanitized. So when did we lose our way? When did eggs of the water become pond scum? But this ancient wisdom, this simple truth of boundless sustenance, inevitably collided with the relentless ambition of a modern empire, the empire of control. To find the moment we declared war on nature, we must look to the post-war explosion of the 1950s. This was the era of the suburbs, the manicured lawn, and the golf course. A new aesthetic was sold to the American public, the idea that nature must be sterile to be beautiful. A healthy pond was redefined. It was no longer a living ecosystem teeming with biological activity. It was expected to be a blue chemical mirror, dead, and still reflecting only the ego of the landowner. In this new world, duckweed committed the ultimate crime. It was messy, it was uncontrollable, and worst of all, it was free. Real estate developers and homeowners associations, the HOAs, began to weaponize language. They didn't call it a food source. They branded it with terms designed to trigger disgust: green plague, pond scum, noxious weed. This wasn't just a change in vocabulary, it was the beginning of a highly profitable cycle. Enter the chemical industry. By classifying this hyper-productive plant as a Tier 1 aquatic nuisance, they created a market where none existed. They engineered herbicides with names that sound like military operations: diquat, fluoridone, flumioxazine. These aren't just soap. They are metabolic disruptors designed to shut down the life force of a plant at the cellular level. And here is the villain timestamp you need to remember: the rise of the commercial aquatic management industry, now valued at over $650 million a year. That is $500 million spent annually, not to grow food, but to destroy it. But the rabbit hole goes deeper. This is not just about selling poison. It is about creating a perverse, infinite feedback loop. It starts with industrial agriculture. Massive farms spray tons of nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizers on corn and soy. This runoff washes into our waterways, creating a toxic nutrient overload. Nature, in its infinite intelligence, responds. Duckweed blooms explosively. Why? Because it is a hyper-accumulator. It is trying to save the water. It is rapidly absorbing that toxic nitrogen and phosphorus, locking it away in its tissues, cleaning the ecosystem. But the property owner sees the green bloom and panics. They buy the herbicide. They spray the pond. The duckweed dies, sinking to the bottom. As it rots, it releases all those nutrients back into the water. The water becomes toxic again. So what happens a few weeks later? Another bloom. Another panic. Another sale for the chemical company. They sell the fertilizer that pollutes the water. They sell the poison to kill the plant that tries to clean it. And they guarantee that the problem never goes away. This is not pest management. It is manufactured dependency. They have monetized the destruction of the world's most efficient biological filter. While the chemical giants were busy counting their profits, pure science was quietly, relentlessly uncovering the truth. In sterile laboratories far removed from the muddy ponds, researchers began to look at duckweed not as a weed, but as a machine. And what they found forced modern science to bow its head to ancient wisdom. Specifically, they analyzed Wolffia globosa, the rootless watermeal. When they put this tiny green sphere under the microscope, they didn't see a nuisance. They saw a biological masterpiece. Unlike corn or soy, which waste weeks growing inedible roots, thick stems, and heavy husks, Wolffia is minimalist perfection. It has no roots. It has no bark. It is 100% metabolic tissue. Every single cell is dedicated to one purpose: photosynthesis and reproduction. This is why it doubles in 24 hours. It bypasses the scaffolding of biology. It is pure, edible energy. But the nutritional data is where the story truly shifts from interesting to revolutionary. Recent studies published in top food chemistry journals have confirmed that duckweed contains between 40 to 45% protein by dry weight. That is higher than soybeans. It is higher than chicken. But protein quantity is easy. Protein quality is the holy grail. For decades, we've been told that plants are incomplete proteins, that you need to combine rice and beans to get what you need. Duckweed shatters this myth. It possesses a complete amino acid profile containing all 9 essential amino acids in ratios that closely mimic animal meat. And then there is the B12 bombshell. We have always been taught that vitamin B12, crucial for brain function, can only be found in animal products. It has been the Achilles heel of plant-based survival. Yet researchers at the Weizmann Institute of Science and the University of Jena have detected bioavailable B12 in specifically cultivated Wolffia. Let that sink in. A plant that grows in a bucket of water, doubling every day, providing the one nutrient we thought we had to kill animals to get. This is why NASA and the European Space Agency are obsessed with it. In November 2023, the biotech company Green Onyx sent duckweed to the International Space Station on SpaceX mission CRS-29. They aren't growing lettuce for the astronauts. Lettuce is mostly water and crunch. They are growing duckweed because it is the only organism on Earth fast enough and nutrient-dense enough to sustain a crew on a 3-year mission to Mars. The irony is unbearable. On Earth, we treat it like a plague, poisoning it to protect property values. In space, we treat it like the Holy Grail, cultivating it to protect human life. The same plant. The only difference is that in space, there is no chemical lobby to sell you herbicides. There is only the brutal logic of survival. And in the logic of survival, duckweed is king. So how do you reclaim this power? You don't need a laboratory, and you certainly don't need permission from Monsanto. You can build a protein reactor in your backyard with nothing more than a plastic tote, clean water, and the sun. But before you rush out to the nearest ditch, a warning: duckweed is a hyperaccumulator. It absorbs everything in the water. If it grows in a polluted runoff ditch, it will be toxic. To reclaim this power, you must control the source. Start with a clean container. Use dechlorinated water. Introduce a starter culture of Wolffia globosa or Lemna minor obtained from a reputable source. Feed it with a small amount of organic compost tea or hydroponic nutrients. Then stand back and watch the biological glitch happen. In 24 hours, your harvest will begin. You can skim it off daily, rinse it thoroughly. What you have in your hand is fresh living protein. It tastes like watercress or mild spinach. You can blend it into a green smoothie that packs more nutrition than a steak. You can dry it into a powder that lasts for years, the ultimate survival ration. You can feed it to your chickens or tilapia, eliminating your dependence on expensive commercial feed. By doing this, you are doing more than just gardening. You are breaking the chain of dependency. Every pound of duckweed you grow is a pound of protein you didn't buy from the industrial system. Every time you harvest from your own tank, you are voting against the monocultures that destroy our soil. You are making yourself harder to starve, harder to control, and harder to mislead. The food industry relies on your ignorance. They rely on you believing that food comes from a factory wrapped in plastic shipped across oceans. They rely on you believing that nature is scarce and difficult. Duckweed proves them wrong. Nature is abundant. Nature is fast. And nature is waiting for you to stop fighting it. So the next time you see a pond covered in a vibrant green blanket, don't turn away in disgust. Look closer. That isn't a weed. That isn't a nuisance. That is the fastest regenerating food on Earth. And it has been waiting patiently for you to wake up. Knowledge is not lost. It is simply waiting to be reclaimed. Welcome to the resistance.